When we think about Napoleon Bonaparte, we usually think of battles, armies marching across Europe, cannons firing, empires rising and falling. But there is another side of Napoleon's wars that is rarely talked about. Because while Europe was fighting on the battlefield, it was also fighting somewhere much quieter, inside treasuries, ledgers, and banks. And that hidden fight would end up changing the way the modern world handles money. Before Napoleon, European states were terrible at managing money. There were no strong central banks, no reliable systems to handle long-term debt, no real planning for wars that lasted more than a few years. So rulers did what they always did. They raised taxes. They forced the wealthy to lend money. They reduced the silver content of coins. Or they borrowed from powerful merchant families and hoped for the best. It worked, but only temporarily. As wars grew larger and more expensive, these old methods started to break down. And nowhere was this more obvious than in France. The French Revolution didn't happen just because people wanted freedom or equality. France was broke. Years of war, including massive spending to support the American Revolution, had emptied the royal treasury. The government couldn't pay its debts. Confidence in the monarchy collapsed. In a desperate attempt to fix the problem, revolutionary leaders printed paper money called assignats. At first, people accepted them. Then more were printed, and then even more. Soon, prices exploded. Savings disappeared. Money stopped feeling like money. By the time Napoleon took power, France didn't just need a strong army. It needed a financial reset. One of Napoleon's smartest moves had nothing to do with the battlefield. In 1800, he helped create the Bank of France. This changed everything. For the first time, France had a central institution designed to stabilize money, manage debt, and restore trust. The state wasn't just grabbing resources anymore. It was organizing them. Napoleon understood something crucial. An army without money is useless, and money without trust is worthless. The Bank of France gave the government a way to finance war without destroying the economy in the process. Napoleon's wars were not short campaigns. They were constant. Mass conscription created enormous armies that needed food, weapons, uniforms, and transportation all the time. War became a permanent condition, not a temporary crisis. That forced governments to think differently. Instead of emergency taxes, they issued long-term bonds. Instead of chaos, they planned budgets. Instead of treating banks as enemies, they turned them into partners. War had become an economic system, and whoever managed that system best would survive. Napoleon dominated Europe on land, but Britain had something more powerful than soldiers. It had credit. The Bank of England had already built a system people trusted. Investors believed the British government would pay its debts, and that belief changed everything. Britain could borrow enormous amounts of money, pay its armies, fund its allies, and keep fighting year after year. France relied on conquest to pay for war. Britain relied on confidence, and confidence turned out to be the stronger weapon. Napoleon's wars also created a new kind of power. Bankers. Families like the Rothschilds built networks across Europe that moved money and information faster than any army could march. They financed governments. They handled war loans. They transferred gold across borders. But more importantly, they controlled information. Knowing who won a battle before anyone else meant controlling the markets. This was something entirely new. Finance was no longer local. It was international, and modern banking was taking shape. When Napoleon was finally defeated in 1815, Europe had changed forever. Governments had learned a hard lesson. You cannot fight modern wars with old financial systems. After Napoleon, central banks became permanent. National debt became normal. Credit replaced coercion. Trust became the foundation of money. Money was no longer just metal coins. It was belief. It was institutions. It was confidence. Napoleon didn't invent modern banking, but his wars forced it to exist. States that failed to adapt collapsed. States that learned to manage money survived. Today's central banks, government bonds, and financial systems all trace part of their origin back to this era. In the end, Napoleon proved something unexpected. Power doesn't belong only to those who command armies. It belongs to those who can pay them. And that is how modern banking was born.